The kitchen air was thick that morning like it hadn't moved all night. It still carried the scent of yesterday's burnt toast and bitter coffee grounds, reminders I hadn't bothered to clean up. I cradled my third mug of black coffee, its heat seeping into my hands, my eyes lost in the dark swirl inside. Outside, the neighborhood rolled on in its usual gray monotony. A lawnmower coughed to life a few houses down. Cars moved like clockwork in the distance. But in our house, the quiet was suffocating, like a wire stretched tight, ready to snap. Rachel sat across from me, dragging the chair roughly across the floor. The sharp scrape made me wince. She didn't look at me right away, just fidgeted with the edge of her silk robe, some overpriced thing she'd probably just bought. When she finally met my eyes, there wasn't a trace of regret. No sadness. Just that blank, clinical look, like she was about to deliver news she expected me to nod and accept. "Logan," she started, her voice calm. Too calm. "I need to tell you something. I've been seeing someone." The words didn't land so much as hover in the air, cold and simple. She let them sit there like they weren't meant to crush me. "It's Derek. My boss." I didn't react, not right away. I just watched her, trying to understand how the woman I'd slept next to for 3 years, the one I argued with over takeout and thermostats, was now this stranger tearing our life apart with surgical precision. I felt disconnected, like I wasn't even in the room. She must have thought my silence meant I was processing, maybe even accepting it. She kept going. "Look, I know this is sudden, but it doesn't have to ruin everything between us." She leaned forward and her robe shifted just enough to show a hint of her collarbone. "I'll still take care of you, Logan. I mean physically. You won't be left out." That snapped something in me. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the way she said it, like I was a broken appliance she was willing to keep around for convenience. A dry sound escaped me. Could have been a laugh, could have been something else cracking apart inside. I shook my head and finally looked her in the eyes. They weren't soft anymore. "Are you serious right now?" I said, my voice low and rough. "You sit there, tell me you've been screwing your boss, and then toss out some maintenance offer? Like I'm a damn stray dog you feed out of guilt." I shoved my chair back. The legs shrieked against the floor like they were just as angry as I was. And I wasn't done. "Call a lawyer, Rachel. The most expensive, cutthroat one you can find." Her face shifted just slightly. Surprise flickered and then her features hardened. This wasn't the response she'd expected. She thought I'd cry. Maybe yell. Eventually cave. Because that's how she saw me, safe, boring, predictable. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "Don't you dare walk away from me, Logan." She leaned in, eyes narrowing like a predator. "Sit down." I paused, halfway out of my seat. The tension snapped in the air between us. "You think this is your call?" she said with a smirk, something colder than fury in her voice. "You think you can just get a lawyer, serve papers, and ride off into some neat little ending?" Then her voice dipped even lower, deadly calm. "Oh, Logany, you really don't know who you married." I waited, staring. Her next words sliced clean through me. "If you try to divorce me, I'll bury you. I'll go to the cops. Sergeant Fulton plays golf with my dad. Every other Thursday. I'll tell him you hit me. That you've been hitting me. That you snapped just now. Who do you think they'll believe?" She paused, scanning my face like a snake testing for weakness. "Me? Respected attorney, community darling? Or you, some nobody accountant with a checkered past?" She tilted her head, every inch of her calculated malice on display. "I'll ruin you, Logan. Wipe out everything. Your reputation, your job, your friends. I'll make sure there's nothing left but ashes." Her words sat there, venomous and absolute. And then, like it was just another casual remark, she laid out her offer. "You stay. You play the part. Keep your mouth shut about Derek. Or I'll bring your world down in flames." I eased back into the chair like it wasn't even mine anymore, my insides ice cold. This wasn't my wife. This was someone else. Someone who'd already mapped out my destruction with a smile. She crossed her arms, leaning back like a general surveying a fallen battlefield. "Oh, and one more thing," she added, her voice sugar-sweet again. "Derek wants to meet you. He's coming by tomorrow night. 7 sharp." I blinked. "You want him here?" "You heard me," she snapped. "He thinks it's best if we're all on the same page." Then she gave me that twisted smile. "Be a good host, Logan. Offer him a drink." "Oh, maybe you guys can talk golf or whatever it is men like you do," Rachel said, her tone laced with syrupy mockery. The message was obvious, men like me, soft, harmless, second-place types. "Be a good boy, will you? Make a nice impression." I looked at her then, my voice quiet, too quiet. It came out low and steady, like something boiling just below the surface. "Rachel, are you absolutely sure this is the path you want to take? Threats? Inviting him here?" She didn't flinch. "Because I have to," she snapped, her voice steel. "This is my life now, Logan. I run it. You're just existing in the background. She stood up fast, the silk robe sweeping around her like some ridiculous villain in a soap opera. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. And with that she walked off, leaving a silence so thick it pressed down on me like a weight. I reached for my coffee, fingers curling around the mug. But I didn't drink. I just stared into the black surface, watching my warped reflection twist and ripple. Yeah, the dread was still sitting heavy in my gut. But something else was settling in low beneath it, something colder, sharper. A sense of finality. A decision. She thought she held the leash. Thought she'd log ant me until I broke. What she didn't know. That wasn't the sound of breaking. That was the sound of something sharpening. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the start of a war. And I had no intention of losing. By the next evening, the air in the living room was practically humming with tension. The smell of stale smoke clung to the curtains. I'd started smoking again just that afternoon, a small act of rebellion against the life she imagined for me. Cheap whiskey hung in the air too, the burn still lingering in my throat. I sat slouched in my old armchair, a glass of Jack in hand, leaving damp rings on the scratched-up side table. I wasn't preparing myself. I was waiting. I'd spent the day making a few quiet calls to voices I hadn't heard in years. People who owed me, people who remembered. The pieces were already shifting. Then came the sound of the front door opening, followed by Rachel's voice, bright, fake, and hollow. "Derek, darling, come in. Make yourself comfortable." I took a long sip, the whiskey hitting just right, and didn't bother looking up as they entered. Her hand clung to his arm like she was parading him around at a dog show. And when I finally turned to get a look at the so-called alpha, the laugh that bubbled up caught me off guard. He was tiny, maybe 5'5" on a good day. Paunchy belly straining against an overpriced suit that fit him like he borrowed it from someone else. Hair slicked back to hide what wasn't there. He looked like a budget car salesman playing dress-up. A low, contempt-filled chuckle rumbled from my chest. Not amusement, just pure disbelief. I tilted my head and let my gaze crawl over him, top to bottom. Then I laughed again, dry and sharp. "This?" I said, lifting my glass in his direction, the ice clinking. "This is the guy? This is your alpha male, Rachel." I took another sip, savoring the heat and the growing redness creeping into Derek's cheeks. Guy doesn't even need a costume for St. Patty's. Just slap a green hat on him and call it a day. Rachel's smile faltered, tightening like a rope. "Logan. Watch it," she hissed, shooting daggers from her eyes. "Derek is confident. Assertive. Everything you're not." "Oh, I bet," I said, leaning back deeper into my chair like I owned the damn room. "If this leprechaun's your idea of a strong man, Kath, maybe I gave you too much credit all these years." I shifted my gaze to Derek. The guy looked rattled, eyes flicking to Rachel like he expected backup. "So, tell me, Derek," I said, my voice smooth and slow, "how does it feel, walking into my house, planning to screw my wife in my bed? That make you feel powerful?" His face darkened, jaw twitching. He puffed up like a cartoon rooster. "Listen here, pal, Enough," Rachel snapped, stepping between us like she was guarding him. "I told you to be respectful." "Respect?" I snorted, the word tasting sour. "You bring this clown into my home, tell me you're tossing me aside, and I'm supposed to hand him a cocktail and smile? Did you hit your damn head?" I turned back to Derek. "So, let me get this straight, you two shack up, take my house, my money, everything I've built. That about right?" Derek, now feeling bold with Rachel shielding him, straightened his spine and sneered. "That's exactly right, Logan. We've talked it through. You're walking away with nothing. Nada." He smirked like he'd already won. "She deserves better. I'm gonna make sure she gets it. We'll take the house, the bank accounts, garnish your paycheck, hell, you'll be paying for this for the rest of your pathetic life." He took a step forward, trying to loom. It was almost funny. "And tonight," he leaned in with that smug face, "after you slink away somewhere, I'm taking her upstairs. Your bed. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it." I just looked at him, feeling oddly calm. Like the moment before a storm breaks. "The house?" I said quietly, almost like I was confirming something. A slow smile crept across my face, nothing warm about it. "You think you're taking this house?" I let out a low chuckle that turned into a genuine laugh. "Derek, buddy, you sweet, stupid man. This house? It was never mine. Belongs to my mother. She passed 2 years ago, left it in a trust." I leaned in just a bit. "Which means neither of you get a cent out of it. Not from the house. Not from the equity. Not from anything." Then I raised my glass one more time, the whiskey glowing amber under the lamplight. "You two might have thought you were playing chess. But you didn't even realize I built the board. But Logan's not done. And neither is the game he just quietly put into motion." Derek's smirk faded fast. Confusion flickered in his eyes like a bad signal, and he shot a panicked glance at Rachel. She looked just as caught off guard. What? But, and the job, he stammered. I leaned in, pressing the moment while it was mine. The paycheck you were planning to bleed? Sorry, little man. That tap's already dry. I took another slow drink from my glass, letting it settle in his gut like a gut punch. I quit this morning. Effective immediately. Rachel's breath caught. Her face went sheet white. What? She choked out. Derek just looked lost. Like the ground had opened low beneath him and he didn't know how to stop falling. You can't just, she started. I did, I cut in, calm as ever. Let's sum it up, shall we? No house. No job. No paycheck to squeeze. Looks like your big master plan just went up in smoke. I looked back and forth between their faces, hers tight with fury, his crumbling into pure disbelief. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something that didn't suck, cold, sharp satisfaction. So tell me again, Derek, I said, my tone shifting, the humor draining out, replaced by something harder. What exactly is it you think you're taking from me? Because from where I'm sitting, you walked in here with nothing and somehow you're leaving with even less. That's when the kid gloves came off. Cornered and exposed, Derek did what cowards always do, he threw a tantrum. His face twisted into something ugly. You think you're clever? That you're in control now, he barked, trying to puff himself up again like he wasn't built like a middle school band teacher. He took a step forward, trying to get in my face. Well, chest, really? And growled, I'm the alpha, got it? You follow my rules. And right now, rule number 1, he leaned in close, I'm taking Rachel upstairs. The sneer on his face practically begged for a response. Then, out of nowhere, he slapped me. Crack. The sound rang through the room like a pistol shot. I didn't move. Not even a blink. Just slowly lifted my hand to touch the sting blooming across my cheek. And then, I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're amused. No, this one was cold. The kind of smile a wolf gives when it finally corners the rabbit. Derek, I said softly, setting my whiskey glass down with careful precision, I warned you. Then I stood up. Not with fury. With control. Every inch of movement deliberate, like a predator rising to its full height. Get out of my house. Derek laughed, a panicked, stupid sound. Make me, he spat, completely misreading everything. You won't do a damn thing. Guys like you never do. And if you touch me, I'll have you rotting in a cell by sunrise. My smile grew wider, feral now. That slap? It flipped a switch. All the humiliation, all the smug threats, the arrogance, it boiled into something focused. I wasn't out of control. I was dialed in. Jail? I repeated almost kindly. And then my fist connected. No wind-up, no warning. Just a short, brutal strike straight to his jaw. The sound was sickening. Cartilage, bone, something gave way. Derek stumbled back, eyes wide in panic as blood dribbled from the corner of his mouth. I didn't stop. A second blow slammed into his gut. The breath left him in a choking wheeze as he doubled over. I grabbed the front of his overpriced suit, yanked him upright like a sack of laundry. You think this makes you a man? I growled, each word landing with another hit. Thwack, his nose folded, blood spurting. Real men don't leech off other people's lives. Crack, he loganned under the pressure of my fist, ribs giving way. Real men don't crawl into another man's home like a damn rat. Another punch sent him crashing into the wall. And they sure as hell don't lay a hand on someone without being ready to pay for it. He slid to the floor, gasping, trying to cover up like a scared kid. I stood over him, my breathing steady. Not winded. Just done. You're nothing, Derek, I said, my voice flat. Just another coward who picked the wrong house. That's when Rachel finally snapped out of it. Her scream was high and strangled. Logan. Stop. You're gonna kill him. She lunged at me, wild and frantic, hands reaching. But before she could even touch me, someone else moved, fast and quiet, from the hall. Tess. She was already in motion before I could react. Short dark hair, lean build, and that cold, calm presence of someone who's seen worse. Rachel didn't stand a chance. Tess caught her mid-strike, locking both wrists with terrifying ease. Rachel shrieked, writhing. Let go of me. Not happening, Tess said, flat as stone. She spun Rachel around and forced her down, knees hitting the carpet with a thud. Rachel flailed until Tess drove her face into the floor beside her bleeding boyfriend. But Tess wasn't done. 2 quick strikes, precise, controlled, hit Rachel's ribs and shoulder. Not enough to break her. Just enough to take the fight out. Rachel gasped, stunned, struggling for breath. I watched in silence as Tess held her there, steady and unreadable. Then I nodded. Everything was unfolding just as I'd planned. I turned back to Derek, who was barely moving now, and grabbed him by the collar. He didn't resist. He couldn't. I started dragging him toward the front door, one dead weight at a time. Derek's overpriced shoes dragged helplessly along the floor, the rubber soles squealing as I hauled him toward the door. Where are you taking me? He slurred, blood and cake crumbs mixing on his swollen lips. I didn't stop. Just muttered, showtime. The porch lights across the street cast long, stretching shadows across the lawn as I dragged him out low beneath the old oak tree near the curb. He slumped against the rough bark, dazed and ruined. I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing to life. Tapped record. Say hello, Derek, I said, holding the camera inches from his bruised face. Go on, tell the world what happens when you mess with things that don't belong to you. He tried to turn away, but I grabbed his chin and forced him back into the frame. Smile for the camera, asshole. I let go and stepped back, letting him slump like the wreck he was. That's when I noticed the box in the back seat of his car, some gaudy, oversized bakery box. I opened the door and pulled it out. A multi-layered monstrosity, frosting slathered like it was hiding something rotten underneath. I turned back to Derek. You brought a cake? I asked, feigning surprise. Well, damn. That's thoughtful. And then I drove it straight into his face. The thing exploded on impact, frosting and sponge splattered into his hair, his bloody nose, the collar of his fancy little suit. He looked like a rejected clown at a child's birthday party. Still filming, I took a few steps back, then walked over to his car, a sad-looking 3 Series that was trying a little too hard to be impressive. I reached into the bed of my truck and pulled out a tire iron. It felt solid in my grip. Comforting. Crash. The windshield gave way in a spray of shattered safety glass. Smash. The front headlight turned to dust. Thud. A deep, nasty dent caved into the hood under the iron's weight. I worked around the car methodically like I was doing a job that needed doing. Mirrors, taillights, every pane of glass. Gone. Each strike echoed down the street like punctuation. When I was done, I tossed the tire iron onto the lawn, stopped the recording, and slid my phone back into my pocket. I turned to look at Derek, still slumped against the tree, covered in blood and buttercream. Then I glanced back toward the house. Tess was still inside, presumably keeping Rachel on ice. And in the distance, the familiar whine of sirens began to rise. Perfect timing. I stepped over broken glass and walked back toward the house, my mind eerily quiet. It didn't feel like rage anymore. It felt clean. This wasn't some blind act of revenge. It was a message. I wasn't the rug they thought they'd walked on. I was the boot, and I just stomped. The red and blue strobes cut through the front windows, splashing color across the living room walls. Paramedics were out front working on Derek, strapping him to a gurney, his face barely visible low beneath gauze and streaks of frosting. Inside, another team checked on Rachel. She sat curled up on the couch like a lost little girl, eyes red, but she refused to look at me. Tess stood near the hallway, quiet, still, unreadable. A shadow that kept order. A cop, a veteran by the look of the lines on his face, was jotting down my statement. I kept it simple. Attempted break-in. Self-defense. He got violent. I stopped him. No mention of Rachel's cheating. No mention of the threats. Definitely no mention of Tess. Later, at the hospital, the circus tried to roll on. Derek, stitched and sedated but still full of wounded pride, decided he'd had enough. I want him arrested, he barked at the officer by his bed. A thick, broad-shouldered guy with a heavy badge and the nameplate that read, Sergeant Boone. Look what he did to me. That maniac beat me half to death. Boone listened politely, flipping pages in his notebook like he had all day. When Derek finished his rant, the sergeant leaned in, lowering his voice just a bit. You sure that's a good idea, mister? What's the name again? Derek, he spat. Right? Derek. Boone sighed, that tired kind of sigh that says a man has seen too much. Let me give you a little free advice. Off the record, yeah? Derek blinked, caught off guard. You know who Logan really is? He asked. Derek frowned. He's just an accountant. Boone chuckled, a low, humorless sound. Yeah, maybe now. He leaned closer. But back in the day? He rode with the Devil's Disciples. Not as a tag-along. Not some prospect. Full patch member. Road captain, if I remember right. Derek went pale. Boone kept his voice calm. You ever hear about those guys? Real quiet. Real loyal. Real, efficient. You file charges, make this thing official, and it won't be just Logan on your radar. He straightened slightly, folding his arms. You'll be a blip to a dozen men who don't send cease and desist letters. They send warnings in body bags. Derek swallowed hard. His lips moved, but nothing came out. You think a court order's gonna save you from a group that settles scores with chains and fire? You think she's worth that? He nodded toward the hallway where Rachel had likely been taken for further questioning. Worth ending up in pieces across county lines? Derek's jaw worked, but his voice had abandoned him. Boone patted his shoulder once and closed his notebook. Think long and hard before you make noise, son. Logan had drawn his line. But what happens when the dust settles and Rachel finds out the man she tried to break never actually left the shadows she feared most? Derek could still hear the ghost rumble of motorcycles in his head, the kind that makes your teeth buzz. Logan's cold, measured smile haunted him like a bad dream. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. No charges, he croaked. I fell. Slipped on the stairs. It was an accident. Boone gave a slow nod and snapped his notebook shut. Smart move. He stood, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. My advice? Get out of town. Go far. And forget you ever met Logan or his wife. He didn't wait for a reply, just left. One more ghost in the wake. Meanwhile, Rachel was tucked into another room down the hall, less bruised, sure, but more broken than she'd ever admit. She tried spinning her web, abusive husband, random outburst, per Derek caught in the storm. But her story unraveled the moment it brushed against the officer's logic. Especially when Derek, being wheeled past her room like a human cautionary tale, muttered something that made her blood run cold. Drop it, Rachel, he rasped, eyes wide with panic. Just leave it. The divorce, the threats, all of it. She blinked at him. We didn't just screw around with some guy, he hissed. We lit a match in a powder keg. He's not who you thought. Not even close. Then he told her everything, the sergeant's warning, the biker gang, the past Logan had never spoken of. Rachel's confidence cracked like glass. The woman who, just days ago, had dared to threaten and manipulate him now sat mute, her mind spiraling. Devil's disciples? Full patch? She remembered the quiet man who used to fold laundry at night, the one who apologized after every argument. And now this? Her threats from the kitchen, so smug, so sure, now felt childish. She hadn't married a pushover. She'd married a ghost with fangs. The days that followed? Psychological warfare, pure and simple. Rachel didn't put up a fight. Not even a whimper. She found a dirt-cheap attorney, someone Derek had suggested in a half-whisper, and signed off on the divorce like she was agreeing to a prison sentence. No alimony. No house. No savings. Not even the old IKEA furniture. She just wanted out. 5 days later, she was gone, 2 suitcases, some cash from selling her car, and a one-way Greyhound ticket west. No goodbye. No note. Just vanished like smoke. Derek's exit wasn't so smooth. He spent the next week in the hospital under observation. But he wasn't alone. Every day, like clockwork, 2 large men in cracked leather cuts bearing the snarling Devil's Disciples patch showed up during visiting hours. No talking. No threats. Just silent, unblinking stares from chairs beside his bed. The nurses couldn't get rid of them. They weren't breaking rules. But their message was louder than sirens. We see you. When Derek was finally discharged, a new routine started. It wasn't a gang trailing him, not exactly. But 2 bikes idled outside his condo more often than coincidence. Another one parked across from the grocery store when he ran errands. Sometimes they passed his office window just once, then gone. No words. No violence. Just presence. And it worked. He jumped at shadows. Slept with the lights on. And when he finally thought about calling the police again, that idea died in his chest the day he drove by the courthouse. There, on the steps, stood Police Chief Granger, laughing with the mayor. His badge was visible, but over his uniform, unzipped like it belonged there, was a black leather vest. And across the back, the Devil's Disciples patch. Derek nearly vomited. It wasn't just a gang. It was the damn ecosystem. They weren't hiding in the dark. They were woven into the very spine of the town. There was no one to call, no ladder to climb. Every rung was held by one of them. That night, he packed 1 bag, left the rest, condo, car, clothes, behind like a shed skin. He called a cab before the sun came up, didn't tell anyone where he was going. At the airport, he bought the first one-way ticket he could get to somewhere that sounded far. Anchorage. As the plane lifted off, he didn't feel victory. Just the brief relief of prey that slipped the trap, knowing deep down the predators were still out there. And they didn't forget. A few weeks later, late Indian summer clung to the roads like a fever that wouldn't break. The asphalt radiated heat even as the sky bruised with sunset. Purple, gold, burning orange. I had the windows down in my old pickup. Engine humming. Some dusty classic rock station hissing through the speakers. I wasn't headed anywhere specific. Maybe grab a cold beer at that roadside place Tess mentioned. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere far from the house and its ghost-quiet silence. But the road's never truly quiet when you've lived the life Logan has. And some ghosts don't stay buried for long. Up ahead, crawling along like it had no business being on a highway, was a tiny, beat-up hatchback. One of those sad little tin cans you forget even existed. Beige. Faded. Probably a Geo Metro. Logan narrowed his eyes. Even from that distance, he knew exactly who was inside. There was Rachel, stiff as a board in the passenger seat, eyes fixed straight ahead. And behind the wheel, scrunched up like a nervous teenager on his first driving test, was Derek. Looking even smaller, even more pitiful than Logan remembered. A slow, cold smile crept across Logan's face. So they hadn't skipped town after all. Or maybe they were dumb enough to think the storm had passed. Maybe they were just passing through. Didn't matter. They were here. Right in front of him. Logan pressed the gas. The engine of the truck rumbled in response, hungry and eager. He closed in fast, the truck's shadow swallowing the little car like a predator sizing up its prey. He caught the flicker of Rachel's eyes in the rearview mirror. They widened with panic. Derek stiffened, knuckles whitening on the wheel as he tried coaxing speed out of that tired engine. The car whined in protest. Logan nudged their bumper. Just a gentle tap. The hatchback jerked sideways slightly. Rachel screamed. He could hear it even over the rumble of the engines. Derek fought to correct the swerve, hands shaking. Another tap, this one harder. Thump. The car veered toward the shoulder before Derek yanked it back onto the road. Logan pulled up beside them, matching their speed. He looked over. Rachel's face was pure terror. Pale tight. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Derek wouldn't even glance. His eyes were glued to the road, jaw clenched, trying to pretend Logan wasn't real. Logan smiled, no warmth, just teeth. And then, slowly, he veered toward them. Not enough to hit, just enough to force the hatchback off the road. The tiny car gave in, tires bouncing onto the gravel shoulder, a cloud of dust rising in its wake. The engine gave a sad little wheeze and died. Logan pulled ahead a few yards and angled the truck across both lanes, blocking their path. He turned off the ignition. The sudden quiet was jarring. Just the ticking of cooling metal and the chirp of crickets in the tall grass. He grabbed the half-empty can of cheap lager from the cup holder and stepped out, the door creaking behind him. The gravel crunched under his boots as he walked toward them. Neither of them moved. They just sat there, eyes wide, frozen like rabbits under a hawk's shadow. He reached the driver's window, didn't say a word, just stood there, taking them in, Rachel's shaking lip, Derek's shallow breathing. Then, with slow, deliberate ease, he raised the beer can. Derek flinched hard. Logan didn't throw it. He just lobbed it underhand onto the roof. Clunk. Hollow, harmless. Then he leaned down a bit and spoke. Calm, quiet, and with absolute certainty. Get out of my road. He paused for half a breath. Losers. Then he turned his back on them like they were already gone. No rush. No tension. Just done. He climbed back into the truck, fired up the engine, and glanced once in the mirror. They were still sitting there. Just sitting, trapped by their own insignificance. The dust settled around them like a shroud. Logan chuckled to himself, low and satisfied. He turned the volume knob until the radio screamed old-school guitars through the cab. The truck rolled forward into the dusk, headlights cutting through the orange haze of a dying day. The road ahead? Clear as hell. But even with the past behind him, will Logan ever truly outrun the shadows that shaped him, or will the next chapter demand more than silence and scars?